History is usually written in books, but sometimes it's written in the soil. There are patches of our planet where the air feels heavy, where compasses spin aimlessly, and where the locals have a single rule: don't go there after dark. These are the dead zones, places cursed by plagues, war, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. Today, Odyssey of History takes you to the 7 most cursed places on Earth, and the terrifying reason why those who enter often never return. Just a few miles from the shimmering canals and romance of Venice lies a patch of land so dark the local fishermen refuse to cast their nets near its shores. They say they've hauled up more than just fish from these waters. They say they've hauled up bone. This is Poveglia Island. On a map, it looks like a serene escape. In reality, it is a mass grave disguised as an island. For over a millennium, Poveglia has served one primary purpose. It is the place where the Republic of Venice sent the things it wanted to forget. But as any historian will tell you, the past has a way of clawing its way back to the surface. The curse of Poveglia began in the year 1348. The Black Death was ravaging Europe, and Venice, a hub of global trade, was the epicenter. Desperate to save the city, the authorities turned Poveglia into a lazaretto, a quarantine colony. If you showed the slightest symptom, a cough, a fever, a swollen gland, you were torn from your family and rowed across the lagoon. There was no treatment, there was only the wait. Historical records suggest that during the various plague outbreaks, over 160,000 people were burned or buried in massive pits on this tiny scrap of land. To put that into perspective, that is more than the entire current population of Venice. The scale of death was so industrial, so absolute, that it changed the very geology of the island. This brings us to the most chilling scientific fact about Poveglia. Modern soil analysis and local lore agree on a staggering statistic. It is estimated that 50% of the island's soil is composed of human ash. When you walk on Poveglia, you aren't walking on dirt, you are walking on the remains of the forgotten. During the height of the plague, the fires burned day and night. The ash settled into the earth, mixing with the clay to create a thick gray sediment. This isn't just a ghost story, it is a biological reality. The island is quite literally built from the dead. This is why the vegetation grows so aggressively, thick and tangled, as if the earth itself is fed by the souls trapped beneath the surface. But the darkness of Poveglia didn't end with the Middle Ages. In 1922, the island found a new use, a psychiatric hospital. The bell tower, which still stands today, became a beacon of torment. Legend tells of a specific doctor, a man whose name has been scrubbed from official records, but whose deeds linger in the fog. It's said he used the isolation of the island to perform horrific experiments on the patients, believing that the plague ghosts were whispering secrets of the human brain to him. By the late 1920s, the doctor himself began to unravel. He claimed he could hear the screams of the plague victims rising from the soil. In a final act of madness, he climbed the bell tower and threw himself off. According to a nurse who witnessed the fall, he didn't die from the impact. She claimed a mist rose from the ground and strangled him as he lay broken on the ash-rich earth. The hospital was shuttered shortly after. The bell was removed, yet locals still claim to hear it tolling across the water on stormy nights. Today, Poveglia is a forbidden zone. The Italian government has strictly prohibited public access. No tours, no ferries. If you attempt to dock there, you face heavy fines and immediate detention. Occasionally, thrill seekers or paranormal investigators bribe boatmen to take them across under the cover of darkness. The stories they bring back are consistent: an overwhelming sense of being watched, equipment failure, and a physical heaviness in the air. Most leave within the hour, vowing never to return. Poveglia remains a silent sentry in the Venetian lagoon, a reminder that some places are so saturated with suffering that the land itself becomes a predator. It is the island that history tried to burn away, but the ash remains. If Poveglia is an island that history tried to burn, our next location is a coastline that God made in anger. Those aren't my words. They belong to the San Bushmen of the Namibian interior. For centuries, they have called this 300-mile stretch of shifting sand and crashing surf the land God made in anger. When the first Portuguese explorers arrived in the 15th century, they gave it a different name: As Portas do Inferno, the gates of hell. To look at it from above is to see a beautiful golden ribbon of dunes meeting the Atlantic, but to stand upon it is to realize you are standing in a place where human survival was never part of the design. The Skeleton Coast is a natural trap, engineered by the climate. Here, the blistering heat of the Namibia Desert, the oldest desert on the planet, collides with the icy waters of the Benguela Current. This collision creates a thick, impenetrable fog that blankets the shore for over 300 days a year. For centuries, sailors navigating the Cape of Good Hope would find themselves suddenly blinded. Before they could react, the relentless westerly winds and massive surf would drive their ships onto hidden reefs and sandbars. But for those who survived the wreck, the nightmare was only beginning. Imagine the relief of dragging yourself through the freezing surf, reaching dry land, and realizing you survived the gates of hell. That relief lasts only until the fog lifts. You turn around to see the ocean you just escaped, a chaotic, violent sea that makes launching a lifeboat impossible. You turn toward the land, hoping for a village, a river, or even a tree. Instead, you see nothing but towering 100-foot sand dunes stretching for hundreds of miles. There is no water. There is no shade. In many recorded cases, shipwreck survivors didn't die from the crash. They died of thirst within sight of the ocean. This is the curse of the Skeleton Coast. It offers you the gift of life just to show you how slowly it can take it away. The land itself seems to consume these tragedies. Take the wreck of the Eduard Bolin. In 1909, this German cargo ship ran aground in the fog. Today, if you visit the site, the ship isn't on the shore. It is sitting nearly 500 meters inland, surrounded by nothing but sand. The desert is literally growing into the ocean, swallowing the ship and moving it into a sandy grave. But perhaps the most chilling discovery occurred in the 1940s. Explorers found 12 headless human skeletons huddled together near a slate. On that slate, a message was scratched into the stone: "I am proceeding to a river 60 miles north. God will help him." No river was found. No other survivors were ever located. The desert had claimed their names, their bodies, and eventually, their history. Today, the Skeleton Coast is a national park, but access is strictly regulated. You can only enter with a licensed guide, and flying over is often the only way to see the true scale of the wreckage. Over 500 ships and thousands of whale bones litter the sand like bleached ribs. Even today, with GPS and modern radar, ships occasionally fall victim to the sands of hell. It remains a place where the barrier between the living world and the void is paper thin. It is a place that doesn't just hold history, it buries it. At the base of Mount Fuji lies a forest so dense that from a distance the canopy looks like a rolling green ocean. This is Jukai, the sea of trees. But step inside and the world changes instantly. Because the forest grows on a massive field of porous volcanic lava from the year 864, the ground doesn't reflect sound, it swallows it. There is no wind here, no bird song in the deep interior. It is a place of absolute, unnatural silence. For the Japanese, this silence isn't peaceful. It is a warning. In Shinto belief, where every tree and stone has a spirit, the silence of Aokigahara suggests that the forest is holding its breath, waiting for you to lose your way. The curse of Aokigahara is often attributed to the supernatural, but it has a terrifying basis in geology. The volcanic soil is incredibly rich in magnetic iron. If you lay a compass on the ground here, the needle won't point north, it will spin in erratic, frantic circles. Even modern GPS and cell signals struggle to penetrate the iron-rich canopy. This creates a technological blackout. For a hiker who strays just 10 feet from the marked path, the lack of landmarks and the failure of tools mean that every direction looks identical. In Aokigahara, you don't just get lost, you become part of the labyrinth. The forest's reputation as a place of death predates modern times by centuries. Local folklore speaks of ubasute, a grim custom of abandoning the elderly. It is said that during times of famine, families would carry their oldest members into the heart of Jukai and leave them there to save the rest of the village from starvation. This history gave birth to the legend of the yurei, vengeful, footless ghosts with long black hair who haunt the places where they died. Unlike Western ghosts, yurei are believed to be stuck between worlds by powerful emotions like regret or anger. In Aokigahara, these spirits are said to call to the living, luring the vulnerable deeper into the shadows, where the trees themselves seem to move to block the exit. Today, the Japanese government has stopped publishing the number of bodies recovered from the forest to discourage its reputation. Local volunteers and police conduct annual sweeps, moving through the dense brush in lines to reclaim those the forest has taken. Signs are posted at every entrance, pleading with visitors to think of their families and turn back. The curse of Aokigahara is a cycle, a mixture of magnetic anomalies, tragic history, and a forest that provides a perfect, silent shroud for those who wish to vanish. It remains a place where the line between a nature hike and a descent into the underworld is dangerously thin. In the heart of Transylvania, a land already steeped in the blood-soaked legends of Vlad the Impaler, lies a forest that even the bravest locals avoid. It is called Hoia Baciu. Its reputation as a cursed geographic anomaly began in the early 20th century with a shepherd. He entered the woods leading a flock of 200 sheep. He was a man who knew the land, a man of the mountains, yet he never came out. Not a single bone, not a scrap of wool, not a drop of blood was ever found. 200 animals and one man simply evaporated into the timber. Since that day, the forest hasn't just been a place of trees, it has been a place of disappearances. The first thing a visitor notices about Hoia Baciu isn't the ghosts, it's the architecture of the forest itself. In a specific section of the woods, the trees do not grow straight toward the light. Instead, they grow in strange skeletal spirals, curving in clockwise patterns as if following an invisible vortex of energy. Botanists have struggled to explain this. There is no wind pattern or soil deficiency that accounts for why every tree in this cursed acre is uniform in its deformity. It gives the impression that the very fabric of space-time in Hoia Baciu is being twisted by a force we do not yet understand. At the center of the forest lies the clearing, a near-perfect circle of dead ground where no vegetation has grown for over a century. Samples taken from the soil show it is perfectly capable of supporting life, yet nothing takes root. This is the epicenter of the Hoia Baciu curse. The most famous account associated with this spot is the story of a 5-year-old girl who wandered into the woods while playing. A massive search party found nothing. 5 years later, the girl walked out of the forest and back into her village. She was wearing the exact same clothes she disappeared in, untattered, unsoiled, and perfectly fitting. To her, no time had passed. She believed she had only been gone for a few minutes. This time slip phenomenon suggests that Hoia Baciu isn't just a forest, it's a portal. The curse of this land isn't just legendary, it's physical. Tourists who venture into the clearing frequently report a Hoia Baciu sickness. Within minutes of entering the circle, people experience sudden, unexplained migraines, nausea, and even physical burns on their skin that resemble radiation scarring. Electronic equipment, cameras, drones, and watches notoriously malfunction or lose hours of time. Skeptics point to natural magnetic anomalies, but for those who have felt the sudden crushing sense of dread that permeates the clearing, the explanation feels far more predatory. Despite the scientific interest, Hoia Baciu remains largely unmapped in its deep interior. It is a place where the rules of the natural world seem to be suggestions rather than laws. Whether it is a magnetic vortex, a rift in time, or an ancient curse placed upon the Transylvanian soil, one thing remains certain: the shepherd and his 200 sheep are still in there somewhere. And if the legends of the time slip are true, they might still be walking through the trees, unaware that a century has passed without them. In Hoia Baciu, the forest doesn't just take your life, it takes your place in history. Deep within the ancient Xochimilco canals of Mexico City lies a chinampa, or man-made island that looks like a nightmare birthed from a child's toy box. While the surrounding canals are filled with colorful boats and music, Isla de las Muñecas is silent, save for the sound of plastic limbs clicking against wooden trunks in the wind. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of decaying dolls hang from the trees, some missing heads, others with eyes that seem to follow your every move through the humid air. This isn't a tourist trap gone wrong. It is the physical manifestation of a 50-year-old obsession and a curse that claimed its creator in the most poetic way possible. The story begins in the 1950s with a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera. Julian was a hermit who fled the pressures of the world to live alone on this small plot of land. Shortly after his arrival, he made a gruesome discovery: the body of a young girl drowned in the canal near his shore. Haunted by her death and convinced that her restless spirit was wandering the island, Julian found a doll floating in the water shortly after. Believing it was a sign from the girl, he hung the doll on a tree to appease her soul. But the appeasement never ended. Julian claimed the girl's spirit began to speak to him, demanding more protectors against the darkness of the water. For the next 5 decades, Julian transformed the island into a fortress of plastic and porcelain. He scavenged dolls from trash heaps and traded his homegrown vegetables for broken toys. He didn't clean them, he hung them exactly as he found them, covered in mud, missing limbs or infested with insects. Over time, the sun bleached the plastic into a deathly white, and the damp canal air caused the dolls to sprout mold, giving them the appearance of rotting flesh. Visitors who braved the trip claimed the dolls weren't just objects. They whispered to each other at night, their heads turning in unison toward anyone who dared to step onto the island without an offering. The curse of the island reached its chilling climax in 2001. Don Julian's nephew came to the island to help his uncle with chores. During the visit, Julian confessed that the water spirits were calling to him more loudly than ever, wanting him to join them in the depths. Later that day, the nephew found Julian's body. He had drowned in the exact same spot where the little girl had been found 50 years earlier. Heart failure was the official cause, but for the locals, the verdict was clear. The island had finally collected the one soul it wanted most. The protector had become the protected. Today, the island is a dark tourism landmark, but the atmosphere remains oppressive. New dolls are brought by visitors as payment to the spirit of the girl and Don Julian, but the original dolls, the ones Julian hung with his own hands, are said to be the most active. Legend says that if you don't bring a gift, the dolls will attach themselves to your spirit, following you home long after you've left the canals of Xochimilco. In this corner of Mexico, the line between a tribute and a curse has completely vanished. The dolls are still waiting, and the water is still cold. In the heart of the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, the earth is bleeding fire. For over 50 years, a massive pit, 230 feet wide and 65 feet deep, has roared with a relentless, terrifying flame. It is known locally as the door to hell. There are no fences here, no guards, and no fire departments, just a jagged hole in the crust of the planet that illuminates the desert sky for miles. But the curse of Darvaza isn't ancient. It is a modern scar, born from a Soviet miscalculation that turned a routine drilling operation into a permanent gate to the underworld. The year was 1971. Soviet engineers searching for oil set up a massive drilling rig in what they thought was a solid limestone field. They were wrong. Beneath the surface lay a massive cavern of natural gas. As the drill bit pierced the ceiling of the cave, the ground gave way, swallowing the entire rig, the camp, and the equipment into a hissing, dark void. Miraculously, no lives were lost in the initial collapse, but a new danger emerged. Methane gas began pouring out of the crater, threatening the nearby village of Darvaza with a slow, invisible death. Desperate to stop the gas from spreading, the engineers made a fateful decision. They decided to flare the crater, to light it on fire, believing the gas would burn off in a few weeks. They struck a match and threw it into the abyss. That was over half a century ago. The few weeks became decades. The small leak turned out to be one of the largest untapped gas reserves on Earth. The engineers had accidentally created a self-sustaining furnace that defies every attempt to extinguish it. It is a reminder that once you open certain doors in the earth, you may lose the power to close them. To stand at the edge of the door to hell is a sensory assault. The air is thick with the smell of sulfur and burning chemicals, but it is the sound that haunts visitors the most. The rushing gas creates a low-frequency roar, similar to a jet engine at full throttle, that vibrates in your chest. At night, the heat is so intense that you cannot stand within 20 feet of the rim without your skin blistering. Thousands of spiders are reportedly drawn to the pit, lured by the warmth and the light, only to fall into the flames by the millions, a literal crawling nightmare that adds to the site's cursed reputation. For years, the Turkmen government tried to keep the crater a secret. There are no official Soviet reports detailing exactly what was lost in the hole, leading to persistent theories that the drill hit something more than just gas. Some believe the door to hell is exactly that, a physical rift. In 2013, explorer George Coronis became the first person to descend to the bottom of the pit in a heat-reflective suit. He found life, extremophile bacteria living in the fire that exist nowhere else on Earth. It is a place where nature has adapted to hell, and where man's mistake has become a permanent landmark of the cursed Earth. Our journey ends on a small, lush island in the Bay of Bengal. From a satellite, it looks like a tropical paradise: white sands, dense emerald forests, and turquoise waters. But North Sentinel Island is perhaps the most dangerous place on Earth for a modern human to set foot. It is a black hole in the fabric of global history. While the rest of the world moved through the Industrial Revolution, the space age, and the digital frontier, the people here remained exactly as they were 60,000 years ago. They are the Sentinelese, the most isolated tribe on the planet, and they have made one thing very clear: the world is not welcome here. The curse of North Sentinel Island is the curse of the unknown. We do not know their language. We do not know their religion. We don't even know how many of them exist. Estimates range from 50 to 500. They have survived the Great Tsunami of 2004, which decimated the surrounding islands by seemingly sensing the ocean's retreat and heading for high ground. When the Indian Coast Guard flew a helicopter over the island to drop food and supplies, they weren't met with gratitude. They were met with a lone tribesman standing on the beach firing arrows at the million-dollar machine. To the Sentinelese, we are not neighbors, we are demons from a world they refuse to acknowledge. The island's deadly reputation reached a fever pitch in 2018. A young American missionary named John Allen Chau became obsessed with breaking the curse of the island's isolation. He paid local fishermen to smuggle him past the Indian Navy's blockade under the cover of night. His diary entries from those final days reveal a chilling atmosphere. He described the tribesmen's high-pitched shouts and the way they watched him from the tree line. On his final trip to the shore, the fisherman watched from a distance as the tribesman dragged his body across the sand. Because of the island's forbidden status and the tribe's lack of immunity to modern diseases, the Indian government refused to recover his body. John Allen Chau remains there today, buried in the sand of a world that time forgot. There is a secondary, invisible curse that protects North Sentinel Island, the curse of the microbe. Because they have been isolated for 60 millennia, the Sentinelese have no immunity to the common cold, the flu, or even the bacteria we carry on our skin. A single handshake, or even a discarded piece of clothing from a tourist, could trigger an extinction-level event for the entire tribe. This is why the Indian Navy maintains a 5-mile buffer zone around the island, enforced by armed patrols. It is one of the few places on Earth where it is a federal crime to simply exist. The island is cursed to remain in the Stone Age, and we are cursed to never know its secrets. From the plague ash of Poveglia to the silent arrows of North Sentinel, our planet is dotted with places that reject us. These 7 locations remind us that despite our satellites and our technology, there are still edges of the map where the old rules apply. Some curses are made of ghosts, some of fire, and some of iron-willed isolation. But all of them share a single truth: some doors are meant to stay closed. The question is, if you found yourself standing on the shore of North Sentinel Island, would you have the courage to turn back, or would the mystery be too much to resist?